everyone, and welcome to Luminar Coffee Break. I'm Angela Andrieux, and today I'm going to talk to you about how to add sharpness to fine details. Excuse me. So the subject matter we're going to be working with today is feathers. So we're talking about a really soft, fine, light and airy subject, but we want to bring out the details, but we don't want to make it look crunchy. So I'm going to show you a couple of ways that I handle them, and hopefully it gives you some ideas of how to put the techniques to work in your own workflow. Let me switch my screen here. There we go. You guys should be seeing Luminar AI. I want to say hello to Jerry, German, Pat, Joseph. So glad to see you all today. All right, so we've got a great picture up on the screen here. This is taken by Dan and Shell. There's some photographers we work with. They take some amazing photos. And this one is the aftermath of a group of girls, sisters, I believe, having a crazy pillow fight. So all over the ground, we have all those really cool feathers, great texture, great detail, but also light and airy, not a subject we want to make look heavy and crunchy. So let me start by showing you the before. There's the before, and it's a little bit overexposed and the details aren't very defined. Here's my after version. We pulled back on the highlights, we brought out some of those fine details, but we kept that light and airy feel. So let's start by right-clicking on the image, going to adjustments and reverting this to the original. Now I'm going to click over to my tools and I'm going to work this one completely from scratch. We're going to jump over templates today and start with our Accent AI. This does a great job at balancing the exposure, bringing out some details, adding a bit of contrast, and overall just improving the image as a whole. So just that one tool right there, the before, the after. Now as we look at this, you can see that there's still some very, very bright highlights. And if we go up to view and show our histogram, you can see that the histogram is pretty far over here on the right. If I hit the J key on the keyboard, that's going to show my highlight warnings. And everything that's highlighted in red is a clipped highlight, meaning we've lost detail in those areas. So I'm going to go to the light tool and use my highlights slider to bring back as much of that detail as possible. So I'm going to move that to the left. And there we go. We're bringing back detail in all of those super, super bright areas. We still have a few little specks of red in there, but nothing like it was. So we've brought back a lot of that great detail. Now I'm going to leave those highlight warnings on as we go through some of these other adjustments because they are going to affect how those tones are represented, and we want to make sure we're able to keep the detail in those areas. The next thing I want to do is go to our structure. Structure is one of my favorite tools for adding detail because it adds mid-tone clarity. Now, when we use our amount slider, that typically is going to be a pretty heavy-handed slider, and it's not the best for really fine, soft details. So if I bring that up, you're going to see everything gets way more contrasty than it should. It kind of makes these shadows a little deeper. I don't really like that effect that this is having on this image. So I'm going to double click on the handle to reset it and instead just use the boost slider. So if you didn't know, you don't have to have an amount set in order to use the boost slider. We can pull the boost up separately and you'll see that's adding definition without adding so much harsh shadow. So I think that looks really good. That brings out some nice detail. If we zoom in and take a look at that, let's go ahead and let that load, let that render, give it a moment. There we go. And turn that off and then back on again. It's a subtle effect, but it does define those edges a little bit better. Now we can also go down to our details tool. And I'm going to pull up our small details just a little bit. Now if you pull small details up too high, it can get really crunchy, really fast. I'll add a little bit of medium details and a tiny bit of large and a little bit of sharpening. We don't want to add too much. So you see, as I start to bring that up, we're starting to clip a few more highlights. It's pretty minimal, but you want to keep an eye on that, which is why I left that clipping warning on. So all of those little red specks, those are areas where we've lost detail. So we can go back up to our light tool, and I'm almost all the way there on our highlights. I'm going to pull that all the way to 100, and I'm even going to go into our blacks and whites, and I'm going to pull back on those whites a little bit just to kind of balance that out and keep as much of that detail as possible. All right, so let's scroll down and get a little bit creative with this. We've already brought out a lot of really wonderful details, so let's zoom back out, take a look at that overall effect, and make sure we're not getting crunchy. I feel like the detail, especially on the knit of the socks, might be a little bit strong. So that's where I'd go back into my details sliders and pull back a little bit on those medium and pull down on those small details just to take the edge off and maybe even pull back a little bit on that sharpening. It's really a delicate balance between adding detail and maintaining that soft, airy feel of this photograph. Now, to really capitalize on that soft airiness, we're going to go down to our glow tool, which we talked about earlier this week, and we talked about the different types of glow that are available in Luminar AI. We have our glow tool, of course. We also have mystical, and we have high key, which all do somewhat similar things, but they do it differently. So I encourage you to play with each and every one of those, see which one provides the effect that you like best, and different ones are going to work better for different situations. For this particular image, I like the Orton effect because it softens, but it sharpens at the same time. So I'm going to go ahead and pull that up, and you'll see we're starting to lose some of those highlights again, but it gave it a lot more light and airy feel. Now, if we go into our advanced settings, we can pull back on the brightness so it's not quite so strong. That looks good. And even just that contrast down, and you'll see that's clearing out some of those clipped highlights. I think that looks really, really good. All right, now I'm really happy with how this image looks. We've got great detail. We've retained that softness. I'm going to click that J key on my keyboard to turn off that highlight warning and do my final touch, which is a nice big soft vignette. And again, we don't want to make it a heavy vignette. It needs to have a nice smooth transition and not too dark because we want to maintain this really soft feel of the image. I just want to ever so slightly darken the edges to draw the eye in. So we'll take the amount slider, pull that down all the way to -100. I'm going to pull the size down a little bit smaller. We'll go into our advanced settings. We'll grab that feather and we're going to pull that way up. And I think I'm going to leave the inner light alone because if we start pulling that up on this very, very bright subject matter right here in the middle, again, we're going to start clipping some of those highlights. And I want to make sure we keep detail in those brightest areas. So now I'll grab my amount slider and back that off and just move the slider around until I get the effect that I want. And I think that looks awesome. So let's take a look now at our before and our after. We've brought out a lot of detail, really got that detail back in the highlights, and also kept that soft and light and airy feel. Hey Russell, so glad you've been there, or so glad you're able to join us today. And Pat says it looks like her dog has been there. He's a master shudder. Oh my goodness. Yeah, I could say the same about my cats. I have 2 cats that have mostly white fur. This could be my house. Not really, but kind of. All right, so hopefully you guys like this demonstration. You can put this to use in your images. When you're working with something really light and airy and you want to bring out that detail but keep it from getting too crunchy, try to use a mix of the details tools, which is like the details actual tool, structure. Keep in mind that you can use boost without using an amount, and then add in something to kind of counteract and balance that, like one of the glow tools. So glow, mystical, or high key. That'll give you a really cool balance between light and airy and detailed and make for a really fun image. I hope you guys like this, and I want to wish you guys a great day. Tomorrow is our New User Friday, so I hope you'll join us for some quick tips for new users. And then Monday is Memorial Day here in the US. Vanelli and I will be taking the day off, so we will rejoin you on Tuesday with our regular schedule. Hope you guys have a great rest of your day. Thanks for joining me, and we'll see you next time. Bye.